Well, of course, you may say and argue that there are certain premises which are accepted by both of us, and that they lead to what I'm suggesting is so. You know, that in some sense, these being the foundation that we have in common, leads you to therefore have to recognize this is the solution, and therefore why don't you follow it? So we say a lot of things as if they were axiomatic or fact. And typically the discussion or the argument starts with this. So and so is the case. You know, the person arguing is assuming that you, say, believe in reincarnation or believe in the existence of spirits. And you don't. And therefore, there's no point in them going any further, because you're giving, at best, a foolproof argument, given these assumptions are true. And you don't think they are. And they're certainly not, I say certainly, they're not proved to be true. So one really wants to stop the speaker at this point and say, that is not a proven fact. It might be the case that, you know, there's reincarnation or a God exists, but we don't know it. And therefore we won't be sure as objective fact that what you're then going to recommend on the basis of this being fact is at all persuasive to us. In fact, that which is most persuasive to us is seeing that it works. And if we see that it works, we might be encouraged to see if it works for us. Assuming we have the same values as you have. Well, we probably do have similar values. And we've agreed to say that, well, yes, we're seeking happiness, and I'm arguing this brings happiness. Right, but the argument is not proved. It will never be proved. Nothing is ever proved. You know, you can have your reasoning might be faultless, but your premises are always questionable. In other words, what is the reality out there? And how do we handle that in terms of words that don't start to bring in uncertainty? You know, what do we mean by? You know, it depends how you've defined such and such. In other words, getting from your assumptions, which may or may not be valid in the real world, to your conclusion, which relies on a logical argument, which may or may not be sound as well, you come to a conclusion which you're presenting as if it were fact. Well, it's not fact. It's a very uncertain proof. It's a proof, but it's uncertain. All proofs are uncertain. They're not proofs, in other words. They're only proofs in the context of the art of being rational, given your premises. Well, the art is not perfect in itself. We make mistakes, legion, in a chain of reasoning. And the assumptions, or the axioms on which it's built, are not necessarily truth. They're simply what we accept. So the uncertainty in what is proposed defeats the speaker in achieving what he wants. Whereas inspiration, charismatic presentation, can persuade an argument to an audience and of course still be completely wrong. And you're doing it in good faith. You know, it seemed to have worked for me. I think it'll work for you. It doesn't. You know, the wife left him and it all turned to custard. It was not the answer for him. But you offered it, hoping that it would be. Well, it's best in good faith to offer what you think will help, but not to act as though you know it will help, because there's always uncertainty. So all we can say is, I found this worked, I think it works for this reason, it's worked in these cases, I would therefore recommend it to you, because we don't know it will work until you actually do it. Taste and see. And then the reply is, hang on, no, this could be extremely dangerous. Oh, I don't think I am going to risk that. Oh, okay. Right. But in a case of, say, how about trusting God exists and that He loves us and cares for us? Is that something in itself that's extremely dangerous? Doesn't look it ostensibly. You know, there's no massive alarm bells ringing there, is there? If I just say God is all-powerful, that's different. I think, yeah, all-powerful, but is He on my side? I mean, He's going to be a fearful God, isn't He? And if I see Him as all-powerful, and I'm not convinced He's loving, gosh, I don't want to go down that road. Doesn't attract me at all. So I think similarly, with the notion of thanking God, well, it's reasonable to give thanks if God exists, because you are so thankful that He's brought something about, if that's the case. If He doesn't exist, is it a dangerous thing to do? Well, I don't think so. It's just, well, it might still be a very beneficial thing, because you become more positive, more hopeful, more optimistic. Can you be dangerously hopeful and optimistic? Well, yes. God's going to protect me. I'm going to jump off this cliff with these feathery wings and see if I can fly. And I'm sure if I can't, He'll pick me up on angel's wings. Doesn't sound likely. I don't think I'd risk that if I were you. So we do seem to still need a measure of rationality, don't we? He's an all-powerful God and He loves you, so you can do anything, but He's going to come to your rescue. Well, I think the reply was, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Or in modern language, don't push your luck, mate. He might not it might not be that relationship. I mean, it's the same with charity, isn't it? Give to him that asks. You're kidding. A criminal is going to ask you for everything you've got. If he doesn't love you, which is likely. In other words, you have to understand context and rationality well. Don't give to those that don't ask and don't value, because asking indicates valuing. It's pearls before swine if they don't want to know. Are there circumstances where it's wrong to give, even though they've asked? And even though you know it's not, for instance, in their best interest to give this, so you don't do it. Or there are other great costs. If I give this to you, then I don't give it to my family, and I'm meant to have some priority for my family, as far as I know. It's the way I'm made. You say, oh, but that's selfish. And of course then we get the argument, yes, we're given selfishness for a reason. We extend ourselves to include family, friends, and even, those in desperate need, even if they were enemies, we might well want to help them then. Be neighbour to, in other words. I don't mean all your neighbours are enemies, but, they can be, can't they? So yes, certainly there are ways of trusting in God that's reckless, of course. We're not trained to be reckless, we're trained to be rational. But is it helpful to trust that God exists and trust that he loves you and reason from this perspective? That's a complex question. Taste and see. Tentatively. Now, don't jump in at the deep end. Thank him. You could start by thanking him for things that you know are good and you're glad you got them. Then you can extend it to everything that you see as good. And then you might extend it to things that minor that are faults, but you can see can turn out good. So you're going to trust him for it. Or you're going to trust him that this isn't really a cost because he does provide and has in the past. And you're very thankful that he has, and you love him, and you find the stress goes out of your life. Whereas you were eternally worried about tomorrow and regretting the past. But now you trust him for the past and for the future. Is this a great benefit in your life? You bet. You become optimistic, hopeful, assured, happy, at peace, loving. You're more at ease, more generous, more loving, you see? It's a great blessing. Taste and see. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.